You're listening to Systemic Error Podcast. The failure was designed.
A new White House enemies list names just 3 people. It's terrifying. Based on an article by Tara Dublin, the White House has turned its website into a loyalty test. The story in one sentence. The source describes a White House enemies list aimed at leftist influencers, plus threats against social media critics, as the latest move in a long campaign to use official power, media allies, and intimidation to punish people who keep talking about Trump, Epstein, and the administration's lies. Who actually holds power? The power here is not with the influencers named on a government website. It is with the White House staff controlling the site, the political operation behind it, and Donald Trump himself, who the source says has spent years turning the presidency into a personal grievance machine. That is the basic fact the article almost gets right through all its noise when the state publishes a list of critics. The state is not responding to speech. It is policing it. The decision to place names on an official website is not a mistake of tone. It is an act of institutional force. The misdirection is the point. The source frames the listed creators as leftist influencers, but then spends time noting that some are not even beloved by liberals and have their own baggage. That detail matters because it exposes the sleight of hand. The government is not targeting flawless saints. It is targeting people with audiences who have been reporting on Trump's health and the Epstein files. That is the real offense, not ideology, but inconvenience. When the White House turns critics into enemies, it tries to launder retaliation as classification. The argument becomes less we are punishing dissent and more these are bad people. That is propaganda in its most basic form. It does not need a clean factual case. It only needs a target. The article's weakest move. The source reaches for narrative comparisons immediately, and while that rhetoric captures the menace, it also risks flattering the specific machinery at work. The stronger case is more precise and more damning. The White House is using official communications to single out critics, and the president's media ecosystem is normalizing it. That is enough. You do not need theatrical historical analogies to see the pattern. You have a government website, a political leader who has spent years teaching his followers to treat journalism as treason, and a press environment crowded with loyalist amplifiers who help confuse attack with accountability. That is not confusion, it is coordination. The real target is accountability. The source is clearest when it points to the Epstein files and Trump's reported health coverage. That is the thread running through the whole mess. Critics are being marked not because they are powerful, but because they are persistent. They keep returning to subjects Trump once buried. That is why the article's brief mention of a cease and desist order matters. The goal is not just to insult people online. It is to chill speech by making examples out of isolated writers and creators. The message is simple. If you keep talking, the machinery notices you. If the machinery notices you, it can reach for you. This is where the source's outrage is useful and where it is also incomplete. It correctly identifies doxing-style behavior and intimidation, but it still treats the problem too much like a moral scandal. It is more than that. It is an administrative habit of punishment. The system behind the spectacle, what the story reveals, is not a one-off stunt. It is the conversion of government into a broadcast arm for resentment. Trump attacks the press. Loyal media echoes him. Congressional Republicans absorb the language, and official platforms are bent toward naming enemies instead of governing. That is the larger pattern. Power no longer bothers to hide its contempt for scrutiny. It performs it publicly and calls the performance legitimacy. The point is not merely to silence critics. The point is to train everyone else to watch the silence happen and treat it as normal. You've been listening to Systemic Error. Thanks to Roar's story for today's article, with the automated voice of Norman. Thanks for listening.